Okay, so this video is going to be covering Chapter 10 of Improving Vocabulary Skills. If you want to get your book and follow along, we can do that. I don't have mine with me right now, so I can't give you the page number. But let's take a look at these words here. Our first word here is alleviate. The 8 sound should be a clue for you. Benefactor, covert, cynic, demise, infamous, intrinsic, revulsion, that should be a clue to you, that S-I-O-N at the end. Speculate, and that 8 sound at the end should also be a clue. And then virile. So the first word is alleviate, and it ends with that 8 sound, making it a verb. To alleviate his loneliness, the widower moved closer to his daughter and her family. After a long game in the August heat, the young baseball players alleviated their thirst with ice-cold lemonade. What alleviate means is to ease. So what does alleviate means? To not to make something easier, but to ease in the sense of something is causing you hardship of a certain intensity, and to alleviate it means to make that hardship or that pain less. So in the first example, it's talking about loneliness. So loneliness is a bad thing. Um, Generally is a negative feeling. So to alleviate it means to make you feel less lonely, or make it easier to deal with that. In the second one, we're talking about thirst. So again, being thirsty is not a positive experience. So when you alleviate it, it means you're making that experience less bad. Some other things that you might want to alleviate is like, if we uh, I was trying to think. We don't really alleviate a headache, but yeah, it's not really in terms of the pain, but in terms of that there's some hardship or some difficulty that's going on. Um, in the video there, it says, alleviating stress, and you hear that a lot. So stress is something that that is causing you pressure, so that when you alleviate it, it means you're making yourself feel less of something. Our next word here is benefactor, and this one is a noun. The Second Street Bank is a longtime benefactor of the arts. This year, it will sponsor a series of free jazz concerts in the parks. The wealthy benefactor who paid for the children's operation prefers to remain anonymous. So, benefactor is a financial supporter. Now, the way that I always remember this word is, if you look at the word benefactor, it sort of sounds like benefit. And basically, a benefactor is a person or an organization who benefits someone else, meaning that they help someone else. In this case, that you're helping them financially, so with money. So in the first example, it's saying, this bank is a benefactor of the arts, meaning that they give money to hold these free jazz concerts. So because they're giving money, other people benefit from it. They get to go to these concerts for free. In the second example, the wealthy benefactor. In this case, it's almost a synonym with the word donor, but it means that the person is paying for the child's operation. So because the person is paying for the child's operation, the child gets to benefit from it. So a benefactor can be, for an individual, like in the second example, or it could be, like for an organization in which lots of people benefit from it. Okay. Our next word here is covert, and this one is an adjective. Miriam and David's relationship is so covert that they never eat out. Even their best friends don't know they're seeing each other. If you enjoy covert activities, you should become a secret agent. So what means is concealed, and concealed means hidden. When we talk about covert agencies, we're talking about agencies like the CIA. So these are, or the NSA, which is the National Security Agency. So these are organizations that that they don't do their work out in the open, that they're sort of secretive organizations. If you think of a covert, the opposite of it is overt. Overt means obvious, right? Not hidden. But covert means something that is hidden, that's not obvious, that's undercover. Our next word here is cynic, which is a noun. Her parents' a nasty divorce has made Libby a cynic about marriage. Mr. Bryant was a cynic about people until he fell down on a street corner and several strangers rushed to his aid. Cynic is someone who believes the worst. Now, don't get this confused with the word pessimist. We have the word pessimist and optimist. Pessimist is someone who believes that that the future will always be worse, that things are always going to get worse. And an optimist is someone who believes that the future is always going to be better. Then a cynic may also be a pessimist, but the difference is a pessimist is talking about what things are going to happen in the future. A cynic is normally person always believes the worst about a certain group or certain things. The adjective for this is cynical. So in the first example, this woman Libby is a cynic about marriage. So she always believes, because her parents got divorced, she always believes that marriages won't work out, that they're always going to fail. Not just marriages in the future, but marriages in the past, marriages in total. In the second example, it says he's a cynic about people, meaning that this person always thinks that people aren't good, that people aren't going to be nice to you, that in their nature people aren't bad. So a person who is a cynic always believes the worst about someone or something or some idea. And in a sense they're pessimistic, but pessimistic really means that they have a bad view about the future. Our next word here is demise, and this is a noun. In 1567, a beard caused a man's demise. Hans Steiniger's beard was so long that he stepped on it while climbing stairs, lost his balance, fell down the steps, and died. During my years in grade school and high school, the untimely demise of several of my classmates made me very aware of my own mortality. So demise means dying, or it really means death of something. So when we talk about demise, the demise of something, we're talking about the death of it. So demise can be talking about people. In these two examples, we're talking about the demise of people, but we can also say the demise of an idea. So you could talk about people nowadays will say there's a demise of politeness, so that people nowadays aren't as polite as they were before. So it's like politeness, or the idea of politeness, is dying. So when we say demise, we can talk about actual real living things that demise, or ideas that also die. Next word here is infamous, and this one is an adjective. Henry VIII of England was infamous throughout Europe for executing 2 of his 6 wives. Visitors to the dungeons of ancient castles always want to see the instruments of torture, including the infamous Iron Maiden, a body-shaped box with spikes inside. So what infamous means is known unfavorably. The way I always remember this one is that we all know the word famous, right? And we know that the in means not. So the normal reading of this should be infamous, should be not famous. That's what makes sense. But it doesn't actually mean that. It means famous, but not for good things. Famous for not good things. So if someone is infamous, it means that they're very well known for doing something bad. So in the first example, Henry VIII is famous for killing two of his wives. In the second example, this device is famous for being like a device of torture. So whenever you describe something or someone as being infamous, it really means that they're famous, but doing for doing things that are not good or that are negative. Our next word here is intrinsic, and this one is an adjective. Trust is intrinsic to any good friendship. Because Leon had an intrinsic desire to learn, she doesn't need the reward of good grades to motivate her studies. So what intrinsic means is fundamental. But let's look at that a little bit more. If we look at this word, one of the things that it helps me remember it is the beginning of this in. Now we just talked about in meaning not, but in this case in sort of means in the way that internal means inside. So when we say something that is intrinsic, we're talking about something that is inside some idea or some person or something, and that without it, that thing or that person would be different or would be something else. So for example, it's saying trust is intrinsic to any good friendship. So inside of any good friendship, you have to have trust. If you don't have that trust, the friendship is not going to be a good friendship. It'll be some other kind of friendship. But in this sense, it's inside, it's fundamental, that without it, the friendship in this case would change or be different. In the second example, it's saying an intrinsic desire to learn. So what it's saying is that yeah, and this one is really sort of a different meaning than the first one. In the first one, we're saying intrinsic, meaning inside. In the second one, intrinsic is also inside. That it's an intrinsic desire to learn means that the person is motivated to learn from something that's inside of them, not something that's outside of them. So in the second example, intrinsic is more like internal than external, which would be an outside motivation. So in this case, if we say that the person has an intrinsic desire to learn, without this desire, without this intrinsic desire, the person wouldn't be as interested in getting good grades, or wouldn't be getting good grades. Our next one here is revulsion, and this one's a noun. The S-I-O-N tells us that, the shun part. Whenever I read about child abuse in the newspaper, I'm filled with such revulsion that I often cannot finish the article. When Sharon met the man who had cheated her father, she was overcome with revulsion. So revulsion means, in this case it's saying hatred, but again this isn't that great of a one-word definition. Revulsion is related to the word revolting, and revolting has the meaning of disgusting. So when we say about feeling revulsion, it's not just hatred, it's also a hatred that's fueled by a disgust for the person or the thing, and meaning that the thing, it makes you sick to your stomach to think about that thing. So in the first example, it's saying, child abuse fills someone with revulsion. It's not just that they hate it, but they hate it because it makes them feel sick. It just seems so sickening and disgusting. In the second example, the woman, just it makes her feel sick when she meets this man. That in this case there's this kind of hatred, but the hatred is fueled by a sense of of sickness, not of sickness, but of that something makes someone feel disgust or disgusting. Our next word here is speculate, and this ends in the 8 sound, making it a verb. It's interesting to speculate how history might have been different if Abraham Lincoln had lived a few years longer. The therapist asked Cassie to speculate about what might happen if she told Leon her true feelings. Speculate means to guess. Now, if we take a look at this word, I don't know how many of you were in ESL 22, but there's the word spectacle in that one, and a spectacle means a surprising event. But the important thing is that it's something that you see. So when you speculate, what you're doing is you're imagining what the future will look like. In that case, you're guessing about how things will be in the future. Um, in the first example, I know that we're talking about the past, but you're imagining if at this point Abraham Lincoln hadn't died, what would the future have been like after that? Um, in the second one, speculating what might happen if she told Leon her true feelings, you're making a guess as to how things would look if this certain thing had happened. So when we talk about speculate, we're talking about two things. One thing is we're saying what the future would look like, but the second thing is the if part. If something had happened, what would things look like? So, for example, here, and this is one of those reasons why I remind you not to just use these single word definitions. I could say, if I was taking a test, I guessed what the right answer is. There's A, B, C, D. I didn't know the right answer, so I just guessed, right? But we wouldn't really say I speculated, because speculate means I'm thinking about what the future is going to look like, right? If something happened. So speculate isn't exactly the same as to guess. Okay, and our last word here is virile. And virile is an adjective. Men who are unsure about their masculinity sometimes try to prove they are virile by being overly aggressive. When a male heron stamps his feet and sticks his neck out, and then drops his head and says pop, plop, buzz, the female finds him very virile. In fact, the behavior is how the male attracts a mate. Virile means is having attractive male qualities. Okay, so when we're talking about virile, we're talking about two things. One thing is we're talking about male qualities, qualities that we associate with men. But the second thing that we're talking about is that they're attractive. So, for example, I have if you have male children, some of the male qualities, especially of boys and even of men, is that they may not be the cleanest people, or maybe they smell. We wouldn't say that these are virile qualities, because even though they're associated with being a man, they're not attractive qualities. So, for example, I guess it would depend. Having hair on your legs, is a male quality, but I don't know that that's a virile quality. That it would be something that is attractive to other people. Typically in the United States, some of the characteristics we would describe as virile is, being very muscular, is considered to be an attractive male quality. Having a deep voice may be considered virile. Being tall might be considered virile. These are male qualities that are considered to be attractive male qualities. Okay? All right, so that's it. So go ahead and do the questions on this, and bring any additional questions that you have to class. All right, take care. Bye.